Welcome back to video number 2. This is our palette cleanser for today. There's a lot because, as usual, the royal family has been out and about. Let's jump in and get started, shall we? Let's go. We're starting off with Princess Beatrice on October 9th. She attended and I hope I say this correctly, the Frieze Art Fair. Ooh, it was a VIP preview of the event Regent's Park. Beatrice is glowing, but that's usual for pregnant women. Also at the event was British tennis player, I hope I say this right, Emma Raducanu, who met the Princess of Wales on 3 separate occasions, and Princess Charlotte at Wimbledon this year. And Benedict Cumberbatch was also there. God, I love him. And the idea behind this is to bring together art and fashion to make money for Make-A-Wish. I know I've discussed this with you before, but of course, more pictures came out. A big thank you to Remoulade Sauce to show us what she was wearing. Let's move on. Next up, we have Prince Edward. At the end of his trip to Malta, he went to visit a home for people with disabilities. While he was there, he met the director of the home and the inclusion minister. I think it's lovely that they have an inclusion minister. Edward also met up with the Malta Paralympic Committee and visited a rowing gym that is open to all people with disabilities. All right, let's move on. A few days ago, Princess Anne went to open a newly restored clubhouse at the Warsaw Sailing Club. Again, hope I'm saying that correctly. This was supposed to happen back in June, but of course we know what happened to her back in June. She was forced to cancel after she was admitted to the hospital after being hit by the horse. Very interesting. 30 years ago, Anne opened the Shore House building. How cool is that? And she met some of the club's sailors and their coaches. She did promise to reschedule after her accident, and she did. Love it. Let's move on. We're going to return now to Sophie and Edward, the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh. They were finishing up day 3 of their visit to Malta, and they went to celebrate a king's birthday reception at the residence of the British High Commissioner on that particular night. This was their last night in Malta. They had pipers that played at the reception. Edward, of course, gave a speech. They gave a toast. Now, beyond all of this, they had different things going on there. For instance, there was a scout stall there where Edward was able to go and look at all the different things that had been created. Remember, it was on this particular day earlier when they had toured the villa where Queen Elizabeth had lived with Prince Philip when they were on the island. How many decades earlier? I think that's just great. Now, another thing people were talking about was Sophie's dress. She was looking totally chic in that outfit. And what does that go to show you? You don't have to show skin to be chic. Now, we also know, by the way, just earlier on in the day, that Edward and Sophie had spoken with representatives from Heritage Malta who explained what work was being done to restore the villa that the Queen and Prince Philip had lived in, because it was completely in disarray at this point. I mean, how many years later are we talking about? Now, another thing that happened at the reception, I think this is absolutely adorable. Elizabeth Poole is her name, and her mother, Jessie, was the housekeeper for Queen Elizabeth and Philip, who lived in the villa on the outskirts of the capital. And so there were letters between this woman's mother and the royal ladies in waiting. So the daughter kept all of the correspondence between her mother and the queen's ladies in waiting, and then brought it to the reception so Sophie and Edward could see the letters. I just think that is so nice of her to go out of her way to do that. And it looks like Edward and Sophie really enjoyed looking at the correspondence. Anyway, it looks like it was a lovely reception. It looks like this entire trip was a big, success. This is the kind of royal trip that people go on that's a success. Yeah, I love it. And as usual, I want to throw out a big thank you to Remoulade Sauce for showing us everything that Sophie was wearing. Let's move on. Let's talk about Andrew and this whole thing, about the Royal Lodge where Andrew's been living for the last 20 years. They're saying that actually Andrew has won and will be retaining his residence at the Royal Lodge because, as it turns out, the king has absolutely no power to evict him. Remember, Andrew signed a 75-year lease in 2004, and part of the lease was that he had to maintain the property, and it's really fallen into disrepair. And his security is being withdrawn at the end of the month on Charles's order, so Andrew has to arrange his own. But keep in mind that the lease is not with King Charles. The lease is with the Crown Estate, which has not set any deadline. So as of right now, Andrew is staying put. Whew. All right, move on. Next up, Princess Catherine. Nobody was expecting her, but she and William went to Southport to meet up with families and first responders to say thank you. This was all about those poor little girls that were stabbed. So she and William promised the community they would visit as soon as possible. And so as soon as her chemo finished, they went. 3 beautiful little girls aged 6, 7, and 9. Now, when this first happened, of course, William and Catherine released a message giving shock and sympathy for those affected. It was a very personal statement. But now that Catherine was better, they decided it was time to go and meet people in person. So they spent half an hour in private with each of the girls' families, and no further details, they're saying, are going to be given out of respect for their ongoing grief. I think that's lovely. See what I mean? You don't have to go and put out a statement about how you went around and hugged everybody. We all know what I'm talking about. When those meetings were over, then Catherine and William went to speak to emergency responders who attended and helped out that day. Now, I don't know if it was done because this was Catherine's first public engagement since she announced the completion of her chemo or what it was, but except for a very small media contingency, this visit was kept very low key because they're reporting Catherine and William wanted it to remain as discreet as possible out of respect to those involved. They didn't go and walk back and forth in front of memorials and make sure that the press saw them and took pictures. Okay, never mind. I'm going to stop now. The meeting with the first responders came after a meeting that William and Catherine had, another private meeting with the dance teacher from that horrible day. William and Catherine's Royal Foundation made a donation to the National Police and Wellbeing Service fundraiser to help fast track the psychological and physical rehabilitation for the police and ambulance personnel who were involved that day. It would be remiss of me to point out, so I'm going to, that all Catherine had to do was show up to do good. And she took over the headlines as we knew she would, because Princess Catherine knows how to court attention without courting attention, if you guys get what I'm saying. Anyway, a big thank you to Remoulade Sauce as usual for showing us everything that Catherine was wearing on this very important visit. All right, you guys, you know what to do. Hit the like and the subscribe button and the bell for all notifications. Then go down into the description box after you've left your comments, where you'll find the links to my Twitter, my Gettr, my Rumble, my email, my Patreon, which is currently paused, my Amazon wishlist, and a physical address. For those of you who've donated to my coffee fund, thank you so much. And as always, you guys, have a great day.